Welcome back. I'm Ruth Ann, and this is For Those Who Care, a podcast dedicated to caregiving. Today, I have my friend Isaiah here, and we are going to talk about his role as caregiver in Lance's life. And this episode is an encouragement to young caregivers because Isaiah was only 18 when he came to work for us. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. So, Isaiah, thanks so much for being here and for being willing to talk about this.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This is honestly really special for me. I'm very excited.
Well, let me just talk really quick about how you came into our life. And for those of you who follow this podcast, Jenna, my co host from season one, is Isaiah's mom. And that is how we met Isaiah. So initially, Jenna brought all of her kids into our life, and they spent time with Lance and me while I was caring for Lance full time. And during the course of that, I asked Isaiah if he would be interested in becoming Lance's caregiver just part time.
It was not necessarily an out of the blue, but it was certainly an unexpected um, offer slash invitation. And really kind of an extended opportunity, I guess is how I'd phrase it. Looking back, rather than it being a job offer, it was an experience offer. Um, where it was certainly a job, but I view it looking back as more of, hey, I see this kid. I mean, from your perspective, I see this kid who seems to want to interact with us as, as people, as real people. Why don't you do that and get paid for it and be scheduled to do it?
Well, and it was really important for Lance too to have men in his life
Yeah.
because I think it's really common when men become sick that other men in their life just kind of leave because it's uncomfortable. So it was really, really important for Lance. He loved having another man there to hang out with him.
Growing up as someone with three younger sisters, I can definitely understand wanting to have a male presence around outside of just, women are great, fantastic even. But I can understand the need to to have a male presence around just to kind of, mano a mano, like be on the level with someone. It's good. It's balancing. It's balancing.
So, one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you on my podcast is because of the fact that you are so young. But there are a lot of young people who go into nursing and they start off by being a CNA. And I know a lot of people, usually females, become CNAs by the time they graduate high school or shortly thereafter before they go on to become an RN. And so this is really going to be, I think, a great episode to encourage those young people and also young people who have someone in their life who is dealing with a chronic illness or a disability and could use a little bit of extra help. But at 18, most people are focused on school or their friends or what they're going to do for their future. What made you say yes when I asked you about becoming Lance's caregiver?
That one I think has changed over time, which is a weird answer to a question of what made you say yes in the moment. I think the time spent with you and Lance and then the time spent talking with you afterwards have kind of informed me on why I said yes, because it wasn't entirely clear to me at the time. So the jobs that I had worked before working for you were primarily like in food service. I had done a couple of restaurant jobs, standard fare for someone in their teens. Um, and I think it came out the extension of the invitation to work for you, I think, kind of caught me off guard as something. like I would never have considered, I would never have thought of doing something like that. Um, but I think looking back and after some reflection and some, kind of digging through where I was at that point, I think I needed something unique and something difficult. I think that's really the biggest part of it. Um, I've never really been one to shy away from difficulty, and working as a caregiver, something completely outside of my realm of knowledge and completely outside my experience, especially as being 18, it just seemed like this wild opportunity to go do something very uncomfortable, and that weirdly enough was attractive for me, and I, I would never take that back. Like I think I made the right decision, is what I'll say.
Well, you said looking back. So I just want to clarify that you did work for us. It was a little over 6 years ago when you began working for us. So do you think it would be safe to say that you trusted your instincts when you said yes?
Oh, totally. Trusted my instincts and trusted my experience doing other things that were uncomfortable. At that time, I was dealing with a lot of social anxiety and a lot of kind of coming out of my shell and realizing, oh, maybe it's actually a good thing to be, uncomfortable sometimes and to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I really couldn't tell you exactly why I said yes, but I could tell you that the after effects of it certainly make me think that it was a good choice.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that because you made a huge difference in Lance's life and in mine. Well, I want to know when you hear the word caregiver now, how do you define it based on your experience caring for Lance or just being a part of his life at that time?
My family and I had been around you and Lance enough times before working for you that I had kind of seen the nature of how you cared for him and how the other people that you employed cared for him. Um, I think at 18, I didn't really understand what caregiving was. I've never had anyone in my personal life who required full-time caregiving, that I interacted with or I saw other people interact with. So I was flying by the seat of my pants mostly, in terms of how I interpreted the idea of caregiving and what that entails. Um, so I think I saw it a lot more as, kind of the almost embarrassing or shameful drudgery of caring for someone, all of the ugly parts of it, the bathing and changing and the cleaning up and uh, you know bending your whole life around someone is what I saw from media, TV, and everything, where it's this all-consuming and soul-draining experience of having to keep someone on life support basically. And in my head, with no other point of reference, the preconceived notion was that it's this like arduous, like Sisyphean task of caring for someone. And I think looking back, informed by my experience working for you and being around you, and especially being around Lance, is it's a much deeper, it's a much more emotionally vulnerable job than I thought it was. It's not just the emotional vulnerability of dealing with doing things that maybe other people would find distasteful, like the hygiene part of caregiving. People go, "Oh, I could never do that." It's not necessarily the emotional vulnerability of those tasks. It's you are caring for a real human life who is entirely dependent on you, and you don't see clips of them. You don't see glimpses of them. You see all of the good and the bad. And I think now looking back, thinking about caregiving, I all of the aspects of it that I thought were so difficult and distasteful are almost the minor aspects of it compared to the emotional challenge of reconciling the fact that someone you are caring for needs your care. Um, so I think I have a much deeper appreciation for the endeavor than I did at or when I was starting with you guys.
Well, a lot of what you did was companion care with Lance. I really tried to keep some of those other tasks that you were talking about, which is exactly what people think when you ask. When I would ask people if they wanted to be Lance's caregiver, they're thinking, I don't want to help bathe him. I don't want to help do any of that kind of stuff. And that wasn't what I meant. Most of the time, it was companion care and doing things around the house that he could no longer do for himself. And your role in his life was hanging out with him, going on day trips with us. I mean, there were times that because I needed somebody with me at all times. When I took him somewhere, I couldn't leave him alone. So if I needed to spend a few minutes talking to somebody, so, say that we were at a doctor's appointment and I needed to talk to somebody in the pharmacy afterwards, I needed somebody there with Lance because I'd turn around and he would be gone. Or we went shopping to get him some shoes one day, I remember. And I always tried to make those outings fun. And so you got to participate in some of those fun things. We also would go out to the lake and watch all the birds migrate, just things like that. But those are all really important parts of life, and it's being present in the moment. And I invited our caregivers in to be a part of our life in that way. Part of that, though, was that Lance and I were so isolated because of his medical condition, and he was an extrovert. He really needed to be around people. So I needed to have a variety of people in and out of the house to kind of feed that part of his life for him.
I thought about a lot of this as I was kind of reflecting on my experience, coming up to this episode. And there were a couple of outings that I remember really stuck out. And one of them was the first trip that we made to the VA, where I had never been in a VA before, because none of my family was military, at least in insofar as they would need to go to the VA, and I would need to be present there. So I had no expectations going in. I had seldom even been in hospitals before, so it was it was very interesting going in there with him and seeing both of you navigate it like it was your own home and walk in and you go, okay, we're going to this hallway, we're going to this door, we know exactly where Lance needs to go, and it, seeing the reality of how much time you guys had to spend there. And you knew so many of the doctors and nurses by name that I was like, she must be very popular here. Which popular and infamous perhaps are not quite the same thing. But it was really eye-opening for sure because I had no preconceived notions. Um, and I think the second big one is I had worked for a while with you guys repairing the yard to put in flower beds, and I remember you telling me over and over again how much Lance loved being able to look out there and see something, see some beauty where he lives. And I remember we went to, I think it was a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something, and we went out to the garden section and looked for flowers, and we had Lance there, and he was picking out which flowers would look good in the flower beds. And it's such a small, seemingly inconsequential moment, but it was so impactful seeing you take Lance to have ownership over something, and to say, like, we're going to do the difficult thing. I'm going to take you somewhere. I'm gonna drive, and I'm gonna drive down to a busy Home Depot, and we're gonna, you know, get you settled in, and we're gonna wheel you out to the garden section, and we're going to go do this together because I want you to have ownership of this thing that you love. And that was so impactful for me. Like, I don't think it feels weird saying a trip to the Home Depot garden section was like impactful, but I thought about it for so long afterwards, just thinking like this was real. Like it was a real, tangible thing that you took Lance to do that meant something deeply. And it was just flowers. And I think that was so important for my perspective on caregiving, kind of shifting that idea that I led with of caregiving being just, you know, bathing and cleaning and feeding. Like, no, it's also giving the person you're caring for a quality of life and a genuineness to your care that humanizes them, and that really really stuck with me for so long. um and I think that was just it's one of my favorite memories from that time.
Well, I uh, you and I have never talked about this. We talk regularly,
I
and I'm blown away by that answer because you were so young to see that that's what it's all about. It's about a human life,
Yep.
and it's about providing it's about giving value to that life and letting that person know that they still matter. And that's how you do it, is you include them in life,
Yep.
um, no matter how hard it is. And I can say, looking back, that I wouldn't do it any differently. He knew every single day that his life had value. He knew that he mattered. And it was because of the way that I set up our life and because of the people who were a part of it. But you mentioned quality of life, and I want to know, how do you think your time with him impacted his quality of life?
Honestly, having someone new to talk to. Like, you talked about how isolated uh, you two were during his illness. Years and years of having people kind of shy away from interacting with you for fear of, all the baggage that comes with someone who has a terminal illness. Um, and I think just some of my favorite times were just sitting on the couch next to Lance and just hearing the same story 3 or 4 times and being like, I love this. This is this is so different from anyone I've ever interacted with. And Lance is so funny. Like just the way that he would tell stories and the nonsensical details that he would or in seemingly insignificant details that he would add in for flavor. It was like seasoning. Um, I think just having someone to speak with, and I probably someone young, honestly. I think having someone younger that was like, I could tell my Navy stories to this whippersnapper and tell him uh, it's different conversations than you have with someone who is 50 years old. Um, and I think that was good, and I think a lot of the work that I did, like you said, was more companion care, and I did a lot of work inside and outside the house, especially um, doing a lot of work with your guys' gardens and outdoor areas, just making them pleasant to be in. Um, I really highly value a peaceful space, and I think I can probably say with confidence, I can say with confidence that I did my best to make your space as peaceful as possible and as inviting as possible. Because I knew when you took Lance outside, taking that breath of fresh air and getting to see this home, not just place that he lives, but this home that he has that has been made beautiful. I think I think that was really important and that it felt important to me and I took it seriously because of that.
Well, and another thing too is that when you did that work outside, there were times that I would take Lance outside to supervise what you were doing. And Lance had always been a supervisor in the jobs that he did before he had to retire at age 37. And so being able to oversee what you're doing and tell you that you were doing a good job, that was such a big deal for him too.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's it's the same thing that I mentioned with going and picking out flowers is that sense of ownership, that sense of like I am not just being cared for, I'm having an impact on my life and I have some agency in my life. Like I think that was so huge to to have for him.
I love these memories.
Well, I think the other thing you just reminded me, the other thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to working for you was that I mentioned that I was doing some work indoors. I would go from like cleaning the bathroom to going on expeditions with you guys to doing work outdoors to painting. Like every single time that I came to work, there was zero expectation of what was going to be the task for the day. Sometimes there were projects that were like, okay, I'm gonna keep working on this when I come over. But genuinely, the shift from before I worked for you, having this image in my head of what caregiving is, to the reality of I show up every day, and I remember I would come to the door, and you'd say, knock on the door, open or ring the doorbell, and I will come answer the door. I will come answer the door for you, and then you are, come on in. I would just completely shrive myself of any expectation being like anything could happen today. It could be we could be doing anything today. And I think that was in terms of what motivated me to continue working for you, like that was a huge part of it. It was a grab bag every single day. And I think in terms of the kind of overarching theme of this episode, you know, speaking to maybe someone who's listening who's a young caregiver, or just caregivers in general, framing what you do as every day being a new experience softens you so much to all of the chaos that can happen while caregiving. Like unexpected things come up all the time. And that's like the nature of Lance's illness was such that sometimes things would happen where you didn't expect that he needs to go to the VA. You didn't expect that he needs to have um, his meals changed. You have to be flexible, but that's kind of the that's kind of the best part of it, at least from a caregiver perspective. You won't be bored. You won't be bored. There's there's always something new happening. There's always some new wrinkle in what's going on. And I think instead of fighting that, I think accepting and working with that and being excited for what the new thing is going to be, good or bad, I think brings a lot of um, depth and meaning to the job.
So, what kind of advice would you offer to someone, a young person especially, who thinks caregiving isn't for me because I don't want to do medical tasks or bathing or whatever it is? What kind of advice or encouragement could you give to them? And also, how can people just support family caregivers with through their presence or through their encouragement or just companionship?
I think, when you say like being scared of bathing or medical tasks, I think the best advice that I would give in regards to that is it's always worse in your head. And once you're doing it, it's just another thing you're doing. And it's few things are as bad as your brain makes you think they are going to be. And you may find out that it actually carries a lot of impact for you being able to provide this necessary service for someone. Like, put yourself in the shoes of someone who requires caregiving. You don't want to have to be bathed. Like, that's uh, the loss of autonomy in that is so deeply impactful for the person who requires it that doing it for them with dignity and with respect and a level of mutual understanding is so rewarding and humbling that maybe it grosses you out or you just don't want to deal with that. I would say until you do it, you will never know what it's like until you've walked a mile in those shoes. Um, and I'd say, man, just go for it. It's not gonna kill you. It's not gonna kill you, and it may turn out that it changes something for you. Um, but on the second part of your question, relating to how people can be friends and family and, even acquaintances of people who are caregivers or a family of people who need care, I think there's a lie that we often tell ourselves that is, I'm too busy for this. And it's a really convenient way to get out of sharing yourself with someone. And close to what I said about the humility that's offered with offering someone care that they don't want to have to ask for, I think there's some humility to be gained in sacrificing some of your energy and your time for someone who needs it. Again, I hate, going back to the same thing over and over again, but you saying that you and Lance were so isolated, that's because it's so hard to find people who will offer and really truly sacrifice part of their time to engage and to be there for you, to be like present emotionally. It's hard. Like, I will never tell people that it's not hard being part of that, but that's the point, is it's hard. Um, and I think if you are friends with someone or you know someone who is a full-time caregiver or someone who has family who needs caregiving, reach out to them. It You may have a 30-minute phone call with them, and it'll be 30 minutes out of your day, but that person will think about that for far longer than 30 minutes. It is the unequal impact that it has from you sharing part of your time that you could have dedicated to something else with someone is so much more impactful than you could think. Um, and I think that would be my biggest advice is just reach out and give a little bit, because that little bit goes so far towards keeping someone sane. You know, I saw caregiver Ruth Ann. Caregiver Ruth Ann needed a 30-minute phone call sometimes. Sometimes once in a while, maybe.
And you're right, every little bit helps. It really does. So you might think that, or someone might think that I'm just not going to bother her because with this text that I wanted to send. But trust me, those texts are so welcome. Those phone calls are so welcome. It's up to me to set my own boundaries on what I can and cannot accept, or when I can and cannot accept them. So if somebody's calling or texting me and I can't answer that, I'm not going to. That's not on the person texting or calling. That's on me.
And I think the second thing that I forgot to mention is ask the person how to interact with them. Because I see it so often. Happens very often when people have friends or family who are dealing with the loss of a loved one, and they do not know how to approach them. Is it okay to mention this person? Is it okay to ask how you're doing? Is it okay to, do I need to just pretend like nothing's wrong? Just ask the person, how do I approach you? It feels like an uncomfortable question, but I guarantee that person will be so relieved that you've just leveled the playing field. You put all your cards out and you said, I just want to know how to approach you. This is awkward for me. They know it's awkward for you. They know it's awkward for you to reach out. But if they could explain to you how to interact and how, what is or isn't on the table, it, it brings some honesty into the relationship where you're just on the level and there's no tiptoeing. I think that's very helpful.
Good advice, Isaiah. And communication is so important. So, yes, definitely ask. Ask those questions. They're uncomfortable. They definitely are. But hey, when you get out of your comfort zone, that's how you grow.
Ask the uncomfortable questions.
Well, uh, what advice would you give to families who are asking for help? Like in the position that I was in where I needed help, what kind of advice can you offer? And you can base that on what I did and how I did it, what I did right, what I did wrong, how I could have done it better. Whatever you can offer, I would appreciate it.
That one's harder to answer because I've never been on the side of needing to ask for help. But like you said, I got to watch you, reach out, and I get to see how you interacted with people and how you, over so many years of caregiving, refined your, methods of interacting with people and methods of asking for help when you needed it. Um, I would say it's kind of the same on both sides. It's humility and honesty. It's not being too prideful to ask for the embarrassing help or the trivial help, as it often is. Um, Not being too prideful to just ask someone to go to the grocery store with you. Like, it's so stupid, it seems, to ask someone, hey, I just need someone to go with me to Costco because it's very loud and bright in there, and I need someone to keep me grounded while I shop for groceries. Like, that's embarrassing and it's vulnerable, but ask for that because you may be giving someone else an opportunity to do something for you that they will jump at. Um, and the other one just being honest, saying, here is what I need, take it or leave it, and not bending yourself to what you think others will be comfortable with. Not saying, I need some caregiving help. but it's okay if you don't want to do X, Y, and Z. It's okay if you just do this. Like, no, you need help with the X, Y, and Z, so ask for it. I think that would be those two would be my biggest um, suggestions for people who are caregiving is be upfront and like I said in the previous point, put all your cards on the table. Say, this is what I need, take it or leave it.
I've said that a lot in my life. Take it or leave it. And here's the thing too about any job. How many jobs have you had where you love everything that you do? You're
Yep.
not you're not going to love everything about the job, but they are necessary parts of the job. I'll tell you what, I worked in business a lot, and before I quit my job to stay at home and take care of my husband, and my least favorite thing is paperwork. I absolutely cannot stand paperwork, but it is a necessary part of business. So I did
Yep.
it.
You knew what needed to be done, and not every part is going to be fun, but you said, all right, this is what this is what's necessary. I'm just gonna do it.
Well, let's move on to caring for someone with dementia who was too young to have dementia, because Lance was only 39, 38, 39 when he was diagnosed with dementia. And when you came to work for us, he was 49, going on 50 years old. So when you think back to Lance in his late 40s dealing with cancer and dementia, what stands out as different from what people usually think when they hear the word dementia?
I think that one's similar to the question of how is caregiving different than what you expected. Like a lot of my information about what dementia is or how it presents was heavily informed by media and other people's stories about it. Um, and so with dementia, you expect someone walking around, walking into closed doors, or asking where someone is who they haven't seen in 30 years. And that's not necessarily what it always is. I think Lance had very clear memories of a lot of things. And despite his memory loss as time went on, there were things that were locked in there that he could coherently conjure. And I think that was kind of surprising for me one of the first times that I interacted with him, that he was telling me like a full story about something that had happened. And I mean, I thought this was the guy who had dementia and like worsening memory loss. Why is he telling me all of like I said, all of the seemingly insignificant details about this story? Um, I think it was a good shift in perspective, seeing like being able to interact with a real person diagnosed with dementia versus just the picture I had in my head of how it presents. I think I have a lot fewer assumptions now about what that means after having interacted with Lance.
Every situation is different. Every person's story is different, and the way that they present their symptoms are all so varied. It's hard to just kind of put it into a box, which is what I think most people do. They put everything into a box. Well, I want to offer advice and encouragement for current and future caregivers. What helped you cope with the emotional load, and what practical things or mindsets kept you from burning out in that short but intense season, because you worked for us for about 6 months?
I was there for, like you said, about 6 months. And I definitely felt the impact, the emotional impact, especially of working for you, being around someone, and I think maybe just having the awareness that I'm caring for an actual life. Um, I wasn't doing I wasn't doing IVs. I wasn't doing measuring out his medication or anything, but I was still there watching a watching a person exist who needed care. And that was really a huge emotional load at that time. Um, but for as intense and as taxing as that was emotionally, I think it was almost a reprieve. Um, uh, at home was very chaotic at that moment, dealing with moving and my parents' divorce and subsequent remarriage and dealing with, how to navigate being a teenager in a weird world. I think the what helped me the most with the emotional taxation of it is just the humility, learning humility through that experience and watching you scramble every day. From my perspective, at least, scramble. I'm sure you had everything cataloged in your mind and everything planned out minute by minute, um, for your daily routine. But watching how intense every day was for you and watching you not have the option to wake up and say, "Oh, I'm not feeling good today. I'm not going to do this today." Like that, seeing that you didn't have that option made it so that whenever I was burnt out and tired, I would go, "Oh shit. I'm I'm working part-time for this person." Really shielded from a lot of the more um taxing aspects of the job, like taking the humility pill of I can do this. It's okay. I Maybe I'm tired, but I can do this because I'm watching Ruth Ann and all of the other caregivers that you had hired. I'm watching them do this full time. Like I can do this. It's okay. That helped me step outside of myself a little bit and say, yes, this is hard, but I am capable. Um, I think that was huge for dealing with the burnout or the emotional load. I think you were very open with how much work you put into it. I think that was a huge help.
But what do you mean with open by how much work I put into it?
Oh, you didn't hide the notebooks and notebooks of notes that you had and reminders and everything and how much was going on in your brain at any given moment. You made it very clear how much you had going on in your brain and in your life all the time. And that painted a clear picture for me to see, oh, this is real. This is this is her reality every second of every day. Um, so like advice to caregiver or advice to people who are hiring caregivers, be open with your caregivers saying, "Hey, this is my load. I'm hiring you to do these tasks, but I'm not just sitting here watching and managing. I am in the trenches with you every single day, planning and uh, making decisions." Like people underestimate how much or how taxing it is to make decisions. I'm making decisions every day and I am planning and communicating and managing, like, share that with your caregivers because they need to know what it's like after they go home for the night.
Mm.
They
I
need
guess,
to know that you don't go home for the night.
yeah, that was 24/7, 365 for me. By the time Lance died, I hadn't had a day off in 7 years. So you get to go home for the weekends. You worked what, maybe 20 hours a week,
Yeah.
and the rest of that time was yours to do whatever
Yeah.
wanted with it, you know. For me, it was that was my life. Caring for Lance was my life. And I didn't leave those things out intentionally just to show people that this is that these are the things that I'm dealing with. Those things had to be there, otherwise I would forget.
But you
So,
didn't hide it.
right, I didn't hide it. I couldn't hide it though. I mean, it needed to be out there because that was my life. I ran everything out of my living space in my house. So I was right there in the center of the house with everything that was going on.
Yeah.
What do you wish families knew about how to support and include younger caregivers who want to work for you?
I think being aware of what the world that younger people are growing up in is like. Um, I think you can lose track of as a caregiver or as a family of someone who needs care. I think you can kind of lose track of the rest of the world because you're so inundated day in, day out with the care that this person needs. I think you can kind of become deaf to the rest of the world revolving. Um, and I think taking a moment in your day to just acknowledge that the rest of the world is still turning, kind of ground yourself, I think helps a lot. Your world is entirely the person that you're caring for, but the person, I think especially younger caregivers, giving them, even if it's just a brief moment of, hey, I see you and I see that you're coming from a world outside of my world. While you're here, you are working in my world, but I see that you are coming from an outside world. I think that goes so far in not feeling alienated by your own job for young people. Um, just even a momentary acknowledgement, I think, is so important.
How would you say to acknowledge that? Because as you're saying this, I'm thinking back to that time in my life, and I am really having a hard time because, like you said, my world stood still. My world had gotten so small that it was all about being at home, caring for Lance, going to medical appointments, going to the gym, and going to counseling, just running the necessary errands, doing those necessary things. I didn't see people living their lives anymore. It So I'm still, even 5 years after his death, I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around that.
Well, you would ask me when I came over, and at the time I thought it was maybe silly, but I can see the intent behind it now. You would ask me sometimes very bluntly in the Ruth Ann way, "Are you doing okay? Are you okay?" Or just asking, we'd be standing in the kitchen for a moment and you could go, "So what's going on in your life?" And to see someone who is so, whose world is entirely caregiving, saying like, "Hey, I give a crap about you. How's your life doing? How are your siblings? How's your mom?" Like uh, you know, it felt good to be able to share those things and be like, okay, take a deep breath. This person is still a person. It makes me view you as a person, and it reminds me that you're viewing me as a person. And just those like tiny one-off moments, uh, you know, those stick with me. I think you asked me one time, there's a door. This is how like clearly I remember this, is there was the door in the corner of your garage that went into the the main house, and I was out there painting one of the shelves out there, and you came out randomly and were like, "Are you doing okay?" And it caught me so off guard because I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm doing okay." But after you left, I was thinking about it like, "Oh, she came out to check on me because it, occurred to her, oh." this person needs to be checked on. Like, not just Lance needs to be checked on. This person also, has a life and has a perception and experiences. I'm gonna go check on him. And despite how unexpected and like sudden it was to have you come out the door and go, "Are you doing all right?" It was very meaningful to me just having you take a moment out of your day to say like, "Hey, how are you?"
I have to say that I have been laughing through this whole thing because um I remember those instances, and what's so funny to me is because I really didn't know how to interact with people anymore because I'd been a caregiver for so long. I was still in caregiver mode when I would ask people questions. I'm asking you as a caregiver, like I'm your caregiver, but I genuinely care. I want to know. I just didn't remember how to communicate with people as a regular person.
Yep, and I think it was good. I think it made a good impact on you know on my willingness to keep coming over and keep working for you. Was I know this person is also caring about me, even if their mind is fully locked into taking care of the person that needs care. They're still thinking about the human aspect of there are other people assisting me right now. Um, so I think it was really meaningful in like I said in your own Ruth Ann way. And I think it'll be like this for everyone who is, the manager of caregivers. They're going to express it in their own way, but they do care about you and they do remember that you're a person.
Well, what would you say to a person who's on the fence about saying yes to becoming a caregiver, or more companion care, I guess, to someone who has dementia or a chronic illness or disability?
I think I would say the exact same thing I said before, in terms of coming to work. Just have no expectations. Don't have any image in your head of what things are going to be like because chances are you'll be wrong every single day if you expect what your day is going to be like. Open yourself to honestly the ride of uh, something new is going to happen every day, and that will propel you forward in terms of your motivation like nothing else will. That would be my biggest advice. And if you think you aren't ready, you are, because that means you know yourself enough. If you think I'm not ready for this and I just don't know if I could possibly deliver the kind and type of care that someone would need, if you are already thinking about those things, you are ready, because that means you know yourself and you are listening to yourself. And that is the biggest thing that I could say matters in caregiving.
So,
Know what you can or can't do, but don't limit yourself to that because you will surprise yourself.
well, I think that's great advice, Isaiah. Thank you so much for being here today and offering your perspective. And I hope that this serves as encouragement to anyone who is thinking about becoming a caregiver or who is already a caregiver. And also, you had a lot of great advice for people like me who needed help around the house, and I appreciate all of that. Thanks for being here, Isaiah, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for our next episode together.
Well, the video continued as Isaiah and I finished up our conversation. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of that in here because I really love reminiscing with people. about that time, I don't think most people know the impact they have when they spend time with caregivers and people who are dealing with chronic illness or disability. And Isaiah was one of those people who had such a big impact on us. I want to share a little bit of this conversation that we had with you. And I did ask Isaiah for permission to do this. So here goes. It,
I was really excited to talk about the memory of going to pick out flowers with you guys because I didn't realize how much it had impacted me until I was thinking about it again, reading these
yeah,
questions. I was like, holy crap, I remember that so vividly, and I remember like what thoughts were going through my head during it. Like I didn't realize how impactful that was. And just being able to share that story is it's so fun.
I think
I love it.
what's so cool for me hearing that from you is that caregiving in my role, I felt so invisible all the time
Mhm.
and so criticized by people for the things that I did. Why do you do that? Why don't you just do it this way? That sounds like it's really hard. You really understood. Like I didn't have the energy to explain to everyone why I do things the way that I do. Just freaking go along with it, people. Come
Yeah,
on.
just
I'm
do it.
there is a reason for this. Do I have to tell you everything? So the fact that you really understood without me having to say, well, here's the story. Lance was 25 years old when he was diagnosed, and we've gone through this 25 years of
Yep.
him feeling like his life has no value because he slowly declined. And now I've got to, and so I've spent that 25 years reinforcing the fact that his life does have value. And this is where we're at now. This is how this looks now.
Yep.
25 years ago, I still was able to have a conversation with him. We could have these intellectual conversations and he could help me make these decisions. He can't do that anymore. Now I
Yep.
need to do something else so that he sees, oh, my life really does have value, and Ruth Ann values my role in her life. I mean, and you could see it on his face.
Yeah. Like the way that he would light up. And I gotta remember, you just reminded me, like, even when he would look out the window at the flower beds, he would comment on how pretty the flowers were, and you'd go, "You picked those out." And you go, "Oh, really?" And he would say, "Yeah, you picked those. Like, that was your doing." And you could see him be kind of like satisfied with himself, be like, yeah, I picked out some good ones. And it was so cool to see him just be pleased with himself and say, okay, maybe I don't remember picking those out, but I still got it. Like I still picked out some damn good ones. And that was such a like tiny infinitesimal portion of your day, but it was like obviously had an impact on him and made his life like worth living as like as intense as that sounds. Like those are the little things that added up.
Well, and I've said before when I've talked in other episodes about he had really bad short-term memory
Yeah.
loss. And even if he didn't remember something after a few minutes, he was always left with a feeling of whatever
Yep.
it was. And I wanted to leave him with good feelings. And so that was my job every single day. I didn't do it perfectly. I'm still human and I lost my temper with him. I was sharp with him.
Yep.
I didn't always feel well. I had bad days too, but my goal when I got up every day was to make it the best day for him that it could be, so that when we ended our day, he felt good.
Yep. Yep. Even if he didn't remember anything that happened that day, he still felt like, okay, it was a good day.
Mhm.
Like I feel something in me is saying like things are all right.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Uh, well,
And
thank you for being a part of that, Isaiah.
thank you. Thank you for like inviting me into your life to do that. I know that's not easy, but like just reiterating, thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. Like, sincerely, so sincerely, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. And be sure you hit that subscribe button so you're notified when the next episode is available. I'll see you next time.